G'day everyone, welcome back. This time we're going to do something a little bit different. So we're going to get back onto a project that stalled a little bit because of the boat. Don't worry, the boat's not going anywhere. Still be regular videos of that. I haven't quite finished some of the jobs that I've been doing, so it's not a full episode yet, but there will be. So stay tuned, don't unsubscribe. There's still plenty of boat videos. What we're working on today though is my 13B Rotary out of my RX-7. Obviously this is not a turbo, this is a supercharger, and I've custom made quite a lot of stuff. For those of you who probably haven't seen this engine before, because I haven't really put a lot into it, it's an experiment. I never really like doing things by halves. I always like, trying to push myself and see what I can come up with. So it's a bit of an experiment. So what we might do, I might disassemble it a little bit and show you what we're going to be doing today, and maybe talk through a little bit of what exactly it is. Like I said, for those of you that probably haven't seen this particular build, and we'll go from there. So anyway, I will ask, if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe. There's lots of work coming on this, lots of fabrication, machining, eventually running, and of course there's still boat videos coming on my 34-foot cruiser that I'm doing a lot of work to. So yeah, as I said, subscribe, like, definitely share if you feel so inclined. But let's get on to the work at hand. Alright, so I just pulled the supercharger off. It wasn't bolted down, so it didn't take me long. And these are sort of some of the main components we're going to work on today. The snout, or the front section, comes through, drives the lobes, which down there I probably should have got those. So we're going to do some machining work on the snout. Primarily we're going to machine these ribs off. I have to get the pulley off because I'm making a new pulley for it, and then we're going to machine a new standoff for the new pulleys so that I can unbolt them and interchange them. This one just presses straight onto the shaft, so that's makes it really hard to interchange them. This is the bar stock that I'm going to use to make the pulleys for the supercharger, or for the supercharger snout. And this big lump, so this is a piece of 150 diameter and it's about 150 high, which I'm going to use to make the crank pulley, or the E-shaft pulley, I suppose, if you want to be specific. Rotaries don't technically run a crank shaft, they run what's referred to as an eccentric shaft. Anyway, that's going to get spun up and bolt to the front via these 4 bolts. I think what I'm going to do as well is drill and tap these 4 bolts out to M8. So at the moment they're M6. I'd probably feel happier if they were running M8s, and then I could put good high tensile bolts in it. But we're going to have to come back, or face it to start with, counterbore it so it sits in the recess, drill it, tap it, and I'm going to run a serpentine belt. So it's a multi-rib V-belt, but I'm going to run a 10-rib V-belt. That's currently a 6-rib. The amount of horsepower that's going to be put, or the amount of RPM really, that's going to be put through this, a 6-rib belt will just slip, guarantee it. So yeah, we're going to tackle that. So both of those machining jobs, they're pretty big. They're going to take a while, especially the crank pulley, because I've got so much material I have to remove. We won't use all of this. It's not, we're only going to use about that much, but a bit of green doesn't hurt. And I suppose that's probably the majority of it. I am going to come through and drill and tap the plate for the supercharger. I've already spot marked where it's got to go. I just made my final decision on what intercooler I'm running as well. So, oh, pardon me. I'm going to run a water to air intercooler, and it'll come from a company called Engineering. They're a 2-inch thick plate, which has like a heat exchanger on it. As the air comes out the bottom of the supercharger, passes through that heat exchanger. That heat exchanger has water in it that flows around to a separate radiator in the front, nothing to do with engine cooling, it's its own separate circuit, and that cools the water back down again, comes through. It's all about removing the heat from the air. Colder air means denser air, means more power and safer power, so you don't run into things like detonation and whatnot with colder air. because I now know what intercooler I'm running, I can space the supercharger up, and the next step is to work out the belt routing, because this wasn't designed to have a supercharger on it, and that's what it's getting. So the belt routing is going to be a whole nother trick. So anyway, I think to start with we might work on the E-shaft pulley, because like I said, that's the one that's going to take the most amount of time, and it's probably the first step anyway. So once we make that, we know exactly how big it is. We can then strip the snout and go from there. So, all right, enough talking. Let's chuck that up in the lathe and get it spun down. This is where we are. So major OD, that is spun down to go inside of the pulley. So that's the last pulley on the snout. That little counterbore in there locates on the same stub that does, so that ensures concentricity with everything. Now this is where it gets a little bit funky. I don't have a digital readout on this machine, and it would be really nice if I did, but I don't. Now I looked up the engineering specs, and the 10 pk belt groove, the pitch of the groove is 3.56 millimeters, so there's a plunge every 3.56. There's a few ways I can go about that. I have a dial indicator, so what I'm going to do is set the dial indicator up on the saddle, and this section is the saddle. So we'll set it up on here so that I can zero the dial indicator and then wind on 3.56 as far as the dial indicator is concerned. Lock the saddle, plunge a cut, re-zero the dial indicator, and then go again. I do have to be careful that I get it exactly right every time, otherwise you'll end up with a compounding error by the time you get to the end. So it takes a bit, but anyway. What I'm going to do first, just to check myself so I can keep a good guide, is I'm going to put some marking blue on this, and I'm going to use the verniers, and I'm going to just scribe a line where I'm going out 3.56 every time, just to try and give me a guide so I can know if I'm well off or not. I'm going to the first groove is going to start 6 mil out from the end, and that gives it a good shoulder, and I've got to plunge in and make a recess, or make a reduced depth, that way the belt will sit and run in its own channel. If I just go and start plunging in the top there, if it wants to jump a tooth, it can jump all the way up the front of the pulley. So anyway, that'll make more sense as I do it. So marking blue, verniers, mark my lines, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the setup once it is set up. Alright, so as you may or may not have seen or picked up on in that time lapse, I went through and I marked them all out with the verniers. I just zeroed, they're the wrong ones, but anyway, basically scribed a line, zeroed the verniers, come out 3.56, scribed another line, and just worked my way from the edge. That was all well and good. I marked it all out nicely, except that I didn't take into account that I'm going to have to machine that down, so which I've done now. So what I'm going to do, these lines are good enough. I'll have my tool ground to the profile, Now it's a 40-degree included angle. That's what the specifications are telling me for a 10 PK. So I think what I'm going to do, there's 10 grooves in a 10 PK. So first groove is going to be there, last groove is going to be there, and then there'll be 8 in between those. I think I'm just going to run it off my scribe lines. Yeah, they're good, they're accurate, and I've got good adequate light here. It's a good tool. I think I can run it off there. Now depth of cut, they are 3.45 deep. So I'm going to have to back calculate that off my cross slide, because this lathe has got really stupid graduations on the cross slide. But anyway, that's for me to worry about, not you. So that's all good. I'm going to set you back up into time lapse, and we're going to get our grooves done. Alright, there we go. Spun around. So parted it off, spun around, put it back in. The battery died in the camera, so sorry you didn't see that, but anyway. And truth be told, I parted about 2/3 of the way in, because I only have a 2.5 mil parting tool, and they get pretty sketchy when you start to plunge in that far. There's a lot of flex on the tool, and yeah, things can go wrong really quick when you're parting, and I didn't want to muck up 3 hours worth of mucking around, or 2 hours worth of work, because anyway, so I parted in so far and then finished the rest off with a hacksaw. Faced it off. So we could in theory leave it there, just drill the 4 holes in here, slide it on and bolt it on, but that's not that fun. Plus it's pretty heavy. I'll weigh it before and after. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to bore most of the guts out of this, bring it all the way back, probably bring it internally, bring it back to about here, just to just to kill a bit of weight, make it look a bit pretty, and just, I don't know, make it look better. Alright, you've probably seen enough time lapse of machining, so the procedure really is I'm just going to drill it. I've got a 1-inch drill, so I'm going to drill it with a 1-inch drill first to, about there, 30 odd mil deep, and then come in with a boring bar and just keep scalloping out. So anyway, I'll bring you back when it's all done. Alright, so before, when it was still solid, it was 2.6 kilos or 5 pound 13 ounces. With it machined out, it's now 1.6, so I knocked a kilo out of it, which brings it down to 1.6 kilos and what's that, 3 pound 8 ounces. So yeah, well worth the time. I've got to drill for the 4 bolts for the to get it onto the E shaft, but that's basically it. So pretty shiny, come up alright. But, well, not but, I just had a part turn up. They shipped it really quickly. I only paid for it last week. So yeah. So this is from Engineering. They're an Australian company down in Victoria. They do all sorts of stuff, but most notably for me is they are the manufacturer of my intercooler plate. So this is my intercooler plate. That's it. So it's a heat resistant, composite material of some sort. Couldn't tell you what it is if I'm being completely honest. That encapsulates what's effectively a heater core heat exchanger, but that sits under the supercharger and gets sandwiched between the 2 plates, and then that's it. So that's my intercooler. Excuse these planes going over. Anyway, I really like these. They're one of the bigger they're one of the bigger cores you get. I might even modify it somewhat, because I can, and try and get more of that core exposed for my application, because remember, this is going on the Rotary. Originally this was designed for a V6 Commodore. So anyway, I'll probably end up modifying it slightly for my application. But yeah, they did give me a bit of a discount, so thank you very much to them. And I will leave a link to, pardon me, I'll leave a link to the Mace Engineering website down in the description. Go and check them out if you got V6 Commodore, or they do other vehicles as well. So, you know, go and have a look, see what they got. They got pretty decent products and their prices are pretty good. So yeah, well, there we go. There's a part number for you if you want it. Right, I'm gonna have a bit of a fiddle with this and see what I need to do to make it work better for my situation. All right, so I figured I should finish one job before I get too carried away with the intercooler. Basically I need to drill my 4 holes now. I'm just going to drill them 6mm at the moment, and that way I can just get it all bolted on, because there's lots more to go and it's all going to have to come apart again. So in order to make sure they're right, because these 4 holes aren't symmetrical, they're drilled off because the timing plate, or the timing pulley, obviously has to bolt on one way. So what I did is I went and I made a nice fitting plug that goes in there. That'll keep the pulleys concentric. And now I can just go, and so long as that one doesn't move, which, you know, couldn't possibly happen, but I can keep an eye on it anyway. I can just go around, mark those 4, and put in the drill press and drill them. Alright, here's the not finished product obviously, but we're getting there. I suppose stare at something long enough and you'll either go mad or figure it out, or both. I've been looking at this and looking at it and trying to get the best belt routing for the supercharger, and I think that's going to be it. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. There's about 180 worth of wrap on the E-shaft pulley, and there'll be a bit more than 180 on the supercharger pulley. The tensioner's on the slack side of the belt, and I'll obviously have to make another tensioner here with a 10 rib pulley on it. That's no real issue, and we're remaking the supercharger pulley anyway, so I'm pretty happy with that. What I did do is the water pump sits in here. Where is it? See if I can get it. So the water pump used to sit in there. I think what I'm going to do is get rid of the water pump and run an electric water pump, because this is your in and your out, and I can make a nice big heavy plate there with some nice big AN dash something or other big fittings there that go down to an electric water pump. One less thing the engine's got to drive. And what it will do, because you'll notice I don't have an alternator here, and I was going to swing the alternator out sort of off this side somewhere, but what it's done is if I come sort of out and up, say, with the water, or out and down with the water, it gives me a really nice spot here to run an alternator. Alright, so I think we're going to change it. I know it seems like a bit of a jump from the last little bit of footage, but what I did, I started thinking about having a spring tensioner in here as opposed to just a hard belt tension. And what really convinced me was I actually got in contact with a guy over Facebook. Baz Washington was his name. Is his name. He runs a workshop down in Sydney called Bazspec Fabrications, and he deals heavily in Eaton superchargers, the M90s, supercharged V6 Commodores, and fabrication to suit. He has put a lot of effort into running these things hard, like a lot of research and development. He knows what's what with them. And his advice was basically, it needs a spring tensioner in it. I'm going to be spinning this thing pretty hard, and rotaries are sort of known for having really quick throttle response. And he said what'll happen is under quick on-off throttles, so when you're blipping the throttle, you'll get large amount of belt slap. So the belt loads and unloads, and you'll end up with slap and slippage. Spring tensioner takes that out. So what I've got, and I had it before, I just thought that'd be better, but it's not. This is a factory tensioner off an L67, so the V6 Commodore that come off, or it might be just a standard V6 Commodore one. Either way, it's got a heavy spring tensioner in it. Now I'm going to remove this pulley because we're going to install that, and I'm going to trim this down heaps. So basically cut all the way down. It's shallow back in there. Oh, pardon me. Shallow back in there, so it doesn't need to be that wide. Cut all the tabs off, and it's going to get welded in to there. I'm going to scallop this out so it can come in a fair way. It'll sit relatively close to where this pulley is. Alright, so after much cutting and grinding and head scratching, this is what we come up with. So there's going to be another idler out here. This is obviously a little bit short now. There'll be another idler out here. I had to just basically get rid of all of that. I sort of tried to niggle it back and niggle it back, and it just got to the point where it had to come apart. There was no real way around it. It was just not going to work. So anyway, I cut it right back. This is the back side, so this will get welded to that. I've already tacked it, and it welds really good. So cast alloy can be hit and miss, but that welds really good. So we're going to get a good solid weld up that side, and then there's across the bottom on the underside, and I think that's going to work. Bloody brilliant. Alright, that was a lot of work. So tensioner, it's fully welded, and this is where I'm going to put my idler pulley. I know the belt looks a little bit close there, but that's maxed out on the tensioner, so realistically it should run somewhere around there. So that'll be about the belt routing. That is nowhere near as close as it looks. There's probably a good, I don't know, nearly half-inch gap between the back side of this belt here and the actual aircon pulley there. So we're good. That was a lot of mucking around. Yeah, tensioner works, which is good. All feels really solid. I suppose the only thing I'm not like super duper happy with is it looks very offset. Like it sort of makes the motor look very, I don't know, heavy to one side. But if I get just like a mock-up alternator, and you know, put the alternator out there with a belt, it sort of makes it look a little bit better. I don't know. I guess it's sort of going to be what it's going to be. I mean, there's a lot of work there, and I don't really want to redo it, and I don't really know how I would redo it. So I think we're finalised. Obviously have to make new pulleys. That's not the pulleys I'm using. So this one will have to be a grooved pulley because it runs on the V side of the belt. This one can be just a flat pulley because it runs on the back side of the belt, and then obviously a supercharger pulley. Not this video. That's a whole another weekend's worth of machining at least. It's a lot of mucking around. But to finish this video off, I am going to drill and tap and bolt the supercharger down. So that's a big step. Anyway, let's do that. Let's just forget about this. I'm happy with that. It needs to be finished off. Actually, I'll show you the back side. So this bracket's just tacked here for now, and I will put a gusset bracket from here sort of back into here, or maybe even sort of all the way across, because there's quite a bit of load on this bracket that wants to snap it out. So yeah, I'll gusset it back, but I think it'll be more than strong enough. I'll come back through. I'm going to fill that. That was an actual hole through the tensioner, so I'll come back through and I'll fill that. But that's fully welded. That side's welded. Yeah, and we can still get the crank position sensor out. I was not. Yeah, that was more work than you'd think to try and. I put it all together and thought, oh, I had it really good, and then went to lift that out and it wouldn't come out. So anyway, bolting supercharger down. Alright, well, I think we're going to leave it there for this episode. Fair bit of work, really. It's sort of, well, the front looks a fair bit different. Anyway, we've got the new lower pulley made, and we got all our belt routing sorted. Now I'm really happy with this. So, and we got all the intercooler spacing sorted, superchargers all the plates been drilled and tapped, and we can now bolt that down fully, which allows me to come through and accurately recess or make my new blower pulley and trim the snout back to where it needs to be. So that can all happen, and it needs to come back a fair bit. So yeah, a bit of a different one this time. Trying to get back into this thing, keep some other projects rolling along while the boat's happening as well. So I would say probably next weekend there should be another good boat video coming up. We've got a good bit of weather, so hopefully I can get out there and finish off a few projects. But we'll see more of this on the channel. Yeah, hopefully I can get a bit of time and get this done and up and running. So, all right, like I said, if you liked it, certainly leave a like. I'm interested for comments. If there's something you see that you think could be improved upon, or just a general comment about it, please let me know. And of course, subscribe if you feel so inclined. That'd be really good. Helps me out, helps the channel growth, and allows me to try and focus and keep working on some of these projects and filming and bringing you something entertaining. So, all right, well, stay safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.